We're looking at the stage now where the spirit disconnects from the body. So we're going to return to Heaven and Hell 446. The deepest communication of our spirit is with our breathing and our heartbeat. Thought connects with our breathing, and affection, an attribute of love, with our heart. You could, love and the heart are always connected, but not as commonly thought with the breathing. Swedenborg says how we breathe affects how we think a lot. Consequently, when these two motions in the body cease, there is an immediate separation. It is these two motions, the respiratory motion of the lungs and the systolic motion of the heart, that are essential ties. Once they are severed, the spirit is left to itself, and the body, being now without the life of its spirit, cools and decays. In case you're more visual than wordal, we have a diagram here for you that lays that out. Affection connects to the motion of the heart, thought connects to the motion of the lungs, and this correspondence, Swedenborg goes on and on about this in his book, Divine Love and Wisdom, because the two basic elements of God are love and wisdom. And so these two organs within us are like the first interceptors of these two channels from God. He says in there's a picture, the way the heart and lungs support each other is a picture of the marriage of goodness and truth, or the deepest connection in the universe. That is heaven in form there. So you're all walking around with that inside your chest. Be proud of it. Use it for good. This is Heaven and Hell 447. We're going to continue the story. After this separation, our spirit stays in the body briefly, but not after the complete stoppage of the heart, which varies depending on the cause of death. We don't. He could be talking about the beating of the heart, or this like microscopic, electrochemical or whatever motion in there. He doesn't specify, because some people can be revived after the heart is stopped. In some cases, the motion of the heart continues for quite a while, and in others, it does not. The moment it does stop, we are being awakened, but this is done by the Lord alone. Being awakened means having our spirit let out of our body and into the spiritual world, which is commonly called resurrection. The reason our spirit is not separated from our body until the motion of the heart has stopped is that the heart answers to affection, an attribute of love, which is our essential life, since all of us derive our vital warmth from love. Consequently, as long as this union lasts, there is a responsiveness, and therefore the life of the spirit is still in the body. So there's a particular reason why the spirit is tied to the body, and why it doesn't take off until the body. There's an order to the taking off. The body has to be in a particular state for this final exit. People can travel in their spirit all the time, and Swedenborg did without any stoppage of the heart. But to really punch out, you got to have this. So people actually can help this process on this side. We're going to be looking at the angels. This wasn't like a bait and switch that hey, we're talking about angels in the title, but we don't mention them in this show. We're going to talk a lot about angels, and we want to also talk about the parallels on this side, because we can actually assist the process, do the function that the angels are doing on that side, on this side. And the more we know about how those angels operate, then the more we know about the best ways we can approach it here. So we want to look at people who are already involved in helping people during the dying process, and we just happen to know people who know people. So I talked to my uncle, who was a chaplain at a hospital. He actually wrote a booklet for the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. It's called Developing Resilience While Caregiving Under Stress. It's essentially how do you take care of people without it draining you as well, in intense times such as this. But also, he just happened to be theologically trained as a Swedenborgian minister. So we both had the knowledge of what Swedenborg said about the other side and the living experience of this side. So we asked him, what similarities do you see between what goes on where we are and what goes on in Swedenborg's descriptions?
I work as a hospice chaplain full-time, and part-time I work in an ICU at a cancer hospital. So I see a lot of transition between here and heaven. And I get to work with people who are incredibly skilled at helping that to happen at this end in a peaceful and pain-free way. And I know, because I've also worked as a pastor in a Swedenborgian church, I know the teachings about what the jobs of angels are at the other end. And it's interesting as I think about it, the main job of the first set of angels that watch over us while we're in a deep sleep is to try to keep our feelings in a really safe and happy place. It's to keep us in loving thoughts and feelings about all the best ideas we've had about the afterlife. And that's kind of neat because in the work I do, I get to work with these amazing nurses. They could be bringing babies into the world, but they choose to help to usher people into the next life and make life comfortable for them. So I'm working with astounding nurses, and they communicate a lot of love. Yes, they watch their medicine to make sure they're not in pain. They watch and help out in every way they can, medically speaking. But a lot of what they do is provide love for the patient and attention for the family members. Just like it's about love for the highest angels, it's also about love in every role that's filled in our hospice work. And I think about these higher angels steering us into these loving, peaceful feelings, and what a wonderful parallel that is at both ends.
If the two sides of the veil are really getting that close at this moment, you have like parallel functions like he's talking about, that would explain why it's so common for people who are in these last few days of life to start reporting spiritual experiences. And Robin told us a little bit about what it's like to see that happening.
It's also a really precious time of life when a person's drifts to that point of no longer being conscious and then they're conscious again. They're often communicating with loved ones who've crossed over to come near to them to help them and welcome them and get them excited about crossing. And you'll hear them waking up from being under, and I mean under, sometimes unconscious, and they'll come out and say, oh, I saw my brother and my mother and my father, and tell you all about the wonderful visits they had. Some of them, you'll be in the room, and because they're able to see sometimes with the eyes of their spirit, even though they're still in their body, we had one case where a patient looked consistently at their mother, their father, the sister who had passed away 10 years ago, and that the mother-in-law, father-in-law, and the brother from that family who had passed away, consistently addressing each one. So there's a lot of remarkable stories. So I would just say it's a really precious time, and if you hear your loved one talking about seeing other people, please don't be alarmed. It's just God's way of getting them ready. They'll often talk about really interesting metaphors like, is my luggage packed? My mother-in-law would talk about her luggage a lot, and she worked for the airlines, and she traveled for almost free all over the world with my wife, Suzanne. And she would always, is my luggage ready? Yeah, Mom, your luggage is ready to go. We're all set. So it's really just a precious time, and to not ever worry about someone seeming like they're delusional when they could be more aware of things than you are. Sometimes they're looking through us, sometimes they look at us. I once said to a hospice patient, are you seeing your family? And he was staring straight ahead at someone. He turned to me and looked at me and locked eyes in this world to look at me and nod, and then looked at back at his family. I said, well, that's great. Don't be afraid to go to them. So it's just such a precious time. And thanks to medication and all the love in a hospice environment or a hospital setting where there's dedicated nurses and doctors and people who wash the body and people who bring in food for everybody. It's really a beautiful process. There's just an ocean of love here and an ocean of love there. It's really an amazing